FBI agents who were fired or forced out by the Trump regime are getting their revenge. They just filed a massive class action against the Trump regime in the District of Columbia federal court, and one of their key pieces of evidence of being retaliated against and wrongfully terminated was what Donald Trump's Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche said during the Conservative Political Action Committee conference last week, where he was bragging that we got rid of any FBI agent who was involved in investigations relating to the January 6th insurrection or who Donald Trump didn't like for other political reasons. When you go through this class action complaint, it lists all of the reasons that these FBI agents were fired. This class can be likely in the hundreds. We've seen some estimates saying there have been 300 FBI agents who have been either forced out, retaliating against, or wrongfully terminated. Here's what it said in the class action complaint. On information and belief, defendants have fired or pushed out employees for the following reasons: refusing to supply a list of all FBI employees who worked on January 6 related investigations so that those employees could be fired, being friends with other disfavored career FBI employees, being assigned to special counsel Jack Smith's investigation into alleged interference in the 2020 presidential election and the alleged unlawful retention of classified documents by the president, refusing to fire line FBI employees due to their assignments and without any finding of misconduct or due process, the false perception that they supported the Black Lives Matter protests, making protected disclosures about misconduct and political activities by defendants and others within the current administration, assignment to politically disfavored investigations, assignment to politically disfavored FBI squads, being targeted by right-wing media personalities, being flagged during artificial intelligence review of internal messages, refusal to violate FBI policy when issued an unlawful directive, being female or non-white, on the mistaken assumption that these characteristics meant that they were insufficiently loyal to Trump or to Kash Patel, displaying an LGBTQ pride flag. Seems like a wonderful work environment there at this FBI. I mean, horrible stuff. You take a look at this class action complaint. It talks about how plaintiffs are a proposed class of former career FBI agents, employees, who have faithfully served our country, doing the right thing, the right way, for the right reasons, while scrupulously and quietly hewing to the ethos of the FBI: fidelity, bravery, integrity. Defendants, the current director of the FBI, Kash Patel, Pam Bondi, have since, beginning in 2025, embarked on a public campaign to oust plaintiffs from federal service because defendants perceive them to be a political opponent, as if fidelity to the law and the proper execution of assignments were somehow hostile partisan acts. Defendants' antagonism to the career FBI civil servants is not newfound. Over the past 5 years, defendant Patel and Bondi were personally embroiled as fact witnesses or attorneys representing adverse parties in investigations brought by the FBI through the FBI's career employees, and now by virtue of presidential appointment to the pinnacle of federal law enforcement, defendants are abusing their positions to claim victories that eluded them on the merits. Really stinging right there. In other words, they couldn't win in the courtroom. They couldn't win under the law. Now they've been appointed to their positions specifically because they hate the FBI and they promised to destroy the FBI, and because they were not smart enough, nor did they have the facts or law on their side, they are now using their positions to pursue the height of retribution. It goes on to talk about how, despite the entitlement to power that defendants claim, they are circumscribed by the Constitution, and their actions stand in flagrant violation of the First and Fifth Amendments in Article 2. Then it talks about the plaintiffs, who are the class representatives, are bringing this claim to vindicate their rights. And then it goes on to talk about in paragraph 157 how on March 26, 2026, Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche spoke at the CPAC conference, where he said, "When it comes to the FBI, Director Patel has cleaned house there too. There isn't a single man or woman with a gun, federal agent, still in that organization that had anything to do with the prosecution of Donald Trump." And it goes on to talk about all the other times that Trump and Patel and Bondi have defamed them both before and during this horrific regime. Let's bring in Harry Littman from the Talking Feds podcast Substack and the Talking Feds YouTube channel. Harry, what a horrific work environment. I mean, these are FBI. Look, let me just take one step back and say this. FBI agents are not known to be litigious people. They're not known to make accusations and allegations like this publicly. As part of their motto, perhaps the more hidden motto, they do things quietly. There's a process where you don't hear about things. And so when they're out there forming a class action of FBI agents who are saying, here are the things that happened, and they are horrific things, like being fired for being black or a woman, believing that that means that you don't like Donald Trump. And then for these other reasons, I mean, this is a horrific work environment, and seeing this laid bare like this in a class action complaint should make a lot of people who don't even care about politics say, wow, this is what's happening. It is. Harry, talk to us about it.
Yeah, it is so naked and raw. And that quote by Todd Blanche at the Conservative Political Action Conference is pure gold. An employment class action, as you would well know, Ben, is typically not going to get anywhere. And for a number of reasons, but one of them is firings are considered very specific kind of judgment calls. Was this person overall late a little too much? Did that one not work so well? Or play in the sandbox? There are individual questions, and a class action needs to have questions in common. But this one, you have Blanche saying each and every one of these people they're looking to represent dozens and dozens were fired for one reason. They were when you have every single person, when he can crow, nobody is carrying a gun who had anything to do with the Trump investigations, then you know that's the reason that all these people were fired. And by the way, they didn't in the discharges. The style of the Trump administration is not to give them reasons or take them through a disciplinary process as is supposed to happen in the FBI or DOJ. Rather, these guys all got little pieces of paper saying they were fired, clear out your desk in 15 minutes for Article 2. So the typical case here would seem very daunting, but this is not the typical case. The basic substance of what they're claiming is easy. It really is. It's clear. They're boasting about it. And by the way, it's not just clear, it is rank, right? These are people who, whatever you might think now, were assigned to work on an important investigation. What did they do wrong? They were supposed to what? Stand up then and say, well, that concerns Donald Trump. I'm resigning before I'll do that. You do your friggin' job. And that's exactly what they did. And we don't know anything about whether they were pro-Trump, anti-Trump. They did their job the way agents are supposed to. So the basics here, the bread and butter of the lawsuit, the kinds of facts that normally would defeat it, here are a layup. And this is in the DC District Court. Many of the judges there, the very ones who looked at all the cases with the January 6th marauders and know how serious all these investigations were, even though now the Trump administration is trying to caricature and trivialize them. The basics are going to be really solid. Now, what does that mean? Doesn't mean that they necessarily win, because there's going to be, and I think the administration will focus on different kinds of procedural maneuvers. They're going to try to say, because it's a total violation of the First and Fifth Amendments, that they don't have to go through the whole Merit Systems Protection Board, and maybe the DOJ will say that. There's going to be a little bit of a argument. Is this exactly firing for viewpoint discrimination, which is very disfavored and you can't do? That's the main allegation in the complaint. It was because of First Amendment, but it's really not speech here, right? It's what they worked on. But there's also a Fifth Amendment claim that they have a property interest in their jobs, and you just can't do it for rank reasons. You know, you raised, Ben, an outlandish hypothetical about firing someone because of their race or sex. This is no different. If you fire them because of their view or because they're working on, it's equally protected and equally kind of capricious to literally go around and say, did you work on them? Zap, as if there's some kind of, Truth and Reconciliation Commission, although of course here it would be Fiction and Reprisal Commission. So two main points that I'm going on too long about. The first, this kind of case would often be really hard to progress to recovery. And here, by the way, they want reinstatement. You mentioned FBI normally does things quietly, but the people who've been fired here are in a rough position because there's no sort of second best. Lawyers are fired, they go into the public sector, they go into state, maybe attorney general's offices. You're an FBI agent. Where you go after that is hard. But anyway, that point one is it would be difficult, but point two is this is the strongest case of this nature I've ever seen, because the basic, they're not going to be able to contest. I'm not even sure they'll try to contest why it happened when Todd Blanche, who, by the way, they're going to try to depose, also going to try to depose Kash Patel, also going to try to depose Pam Bondi, who are all named defendants, says outright, boasting to the Conservative Political Action Conference, every single one is out. The reasons are just completely exposed and open, and any judge, the judge who gets this, is gonna see it. So this is a case worth following that really could have legs relative to other kinds of employment class actions by government workers.
That's, when we dig into the technicalities of class action. I mean, I teach it in law school, where you have to look at numerosity and commonality and typicality and adequacy, and whether class cert occurs first, and then you get to the merits afterwards. And the burden of being able to get the class certified has been made a lot harder by cases like Walmart's v. Dukes and a line of cases by the Supreme Court, ironically pushing things into arbitrations because corporations thought that would be in their interest, until people started filing mass arbitrations, and then the corporations had to pay for the mass arbitration. Like, actually, maybe a class action was the better route to go if it's going to be more expensive doing individual cases. So there's the technical fight, then there's the merits fight. You and I will be following it every step of the way.
Oh, yeah. This is a good one, and it's a righteous one, Ben. This is so friggin' nasty. The FBI did its job. What else is it supposed to do? And by the way, here's another fact that'll come out. Kash Patel testified at his confirmation here. We're not going to get rid of anyone because of cases they worked on. These guys are totally have their pants down. And, even if they win on some procedural technicality, the exposure of the rank, nasty, weaponized politicization of the Bureau, not just the DOJ, but the FBI, that's gonna, I think, really be a bad look for the DOJ, for the country overall.
Harry Litman runs the Talking Feds YouTube channel, Talking Feds Substack, and Talking Feds podcast. Everybody, make sure you subscribe to Harry Litman's channels. Harry, thanks so much.
Thank you, Ben.
Everybody hit subscribe here. Let's get to 7 million subscribers and help Harry get to 1 million subscribers. Thanks for watching.
Love this video? Support independent media and unlock exclusive content, ad-free videos, and custom emojis by becoming a paid member of our YouTube channel today. You can also gift memberships to others. Let's keep growing together.